This one we're going to be talking about living with wildlife and also bears. So to start off, I'll just go over some housekeeping items. Some of you have probably heard this spiel a few times already, but we'll go through it anyway. So I'd like to quickly introduce Christina Anderson. She's the RDKB Watershed Planner in Grand Forks. And sorry, my phone is ringing. And she's also helping us big time in the background with the IT support for these webinars. So we really appreciate that. The webinar is being recorded and it'll be available to watch on our website afterwards. And the link is www.lakesteward.ca. So it'll take a week or so to get everything up there, but it'll be there to click back if you want to. For the bulk of the webinar, the attendees will be muted, and if you won't see your photo, so don't spend too much time looking for it. If you wanted to speak, you'll have to send us a comment in the chat box or the Q&A, and then we can unmute you. And if you're on a phone, you can press *6. It works for some phones, but not all phones, and you can be unmuted that way as well. So if you kind of move your cursor down to the bottom, you'll see the Q&A and chat buttons down there. So the chat box appears as a cartoon comment icon, and you can use that if you have questions about technical issues, if you're not hearing the presenters, or if there's something else going on. And the Q&A button, you can click on that one if you have a question to ask and you want us to read it out for you. And after each presentation, we're going to be, we'll have time for questions. So if there's anything that's kind of needed to be asked during the presentation, you can put it in the Q&A tab and we'll ask it for you. Otherwise, we'll wait till the end so that we don't interrupt the presentation too much. And then Christina and I will be keeping an eye on that stuff kind of throughout. So as long as there's nothing else that came in, everybody seems to be okay for now. We'll start off. So we'll be speaking, or Jenny Coleshill, she's a biologist with the Granby Wilderness Society. She's going to be speaking to us first, and we're going to be learning some information about bears. Thanks, Jenny.
Okay. Share screen. There we go. Video.
Looks like we've got 9 people signed in, and I know that Jenny was going to stop her video while sharing the screen, just to sort of help out with that internet speed.
Yes, Explorenet. So, yeah, we're all ready. I was late on giving Suzanne a little bio of myself, so I thought I would just introduce myself. But yeah, my name's Jenny. I'm a local biologist here. And I've been interested in bears forever, as far as I can remember. Bears have always interested me. Come on, they're the coolest creature out there. My dad, of course, would always get me like the books. All right, you can't see because I stopped my video, but bear attacks books and mauling books and all that to try and dissuade me, but it didn't work. So here we are, and I'm lucky to be in the Boundary area again. It's kind of, I always call it, or like the little data gap in British Columbia. Not a whole lot known, but our bear populations are amazing. America, where grizzly bears and rattlesnakes overlap. So our region is full of biodiversity, and it's just incredible as a biologist to be here as well and to be able to study these things. So we have 2 species of bears here in North America. We have black bears and we have brown bears. So the grizzly bear is actually a subspecies of brown bears, the Ursus arctos horribilis, and the black bears are Ursus americanus. And then under that will be the subspecies where you get the cinnamon bears and the spirit bear and all that. So those are our 2 bears here. So both these species are omnivores. They're both, they're nocturnal and diurnal. This seems to be around, they've changed their behavior based on human activity. So that's why you'll find a lot of black bears who are nocturnal. They're usually very predictable, both species of bears. GPS studies have shown that a grizzly bear will go back to the exact same huckleberry bush they scored on the previous year, see if there's the same huckleberry. So that's easy for planning for them, right? Both species are shy. They're not territorial, and that's compared to species like wolves, who will mark and patrol their territory. And they're not true hibernators. They go through this thing called torpor. So their heart rate decreases, and they don't eat, they don't drink, they don't go to the bathroom in their dens for up to 6-7 months of the year in some places. To people and to noises and to human activity areas. So some of the differences in their behavior, black bears, they're expert tree climbers, whereas grizzly bears aren't. Their claws just aren't the same. They're more diggers. Black bears, you'll find, have more of like a flight response, and grizzly bears can, especially in the face of protecting cubs and territory and prey, they have more of a fight response. Black bears will not usually visit a grizzly bear territory, and grizzly bears like to visit black bear territories, and they will actually eat them as well if they have the opportunity. So those are some similarities and differences. So quick about their physical appearance, some of the differences in the black bear. The black bear, they don't have that typical hump on their back. Their claws are shorter. Grizzly bears' claws are longer, and that's an adaptation for digging. It's not for ripping or a carnivorous type of behavior. It's for digging. The black bears have the taller ears. Grizzly bears are smaller and rounder with the dish-shaped nose. And both, I've had a lot of sighting reports here in the boundary for grizzly bears, when in fact it's a lot of the time it's a cinnamon black bear. So this is kind of where I'm going to go into mostly talking about grizzly bears. I'm a lot more familiar with them, and I find them such an interesting species, and so I thought I would share what I know, what's going on with their conservation around the area and our local population here. So just a quick, of course, the historical distribution of grizzly bears was all the way down to Mexico, all the way to the prairies, and sightings or evidence towards Hudson Bay. And now, because of changes in distribution, because of human activity, they're more constrained to mountainous areas. But that might have not historically been their most favorite areas, but it's where human activity is less and where they are now. They have an incredible interaction with their ecosystem. So this guy, I just love this relationship. This is a Clark's nutcracker. They are solely responsible for the reproduction of white bark pine, which is an endangered tree on the federal government, the COSWIC list, the endangered list. And the Clark's nutcracker will make caches of these white bark pines, and then they forget about a whole bunch of these caches. And this is how the white bark pine will reproduce. And grizzly bears really rely upon the white bark pine cone production in the fall. And in Yellowstone and some places in the States, they actually might change their management plans based on the productivity of the cones that year. So they've evolved with these, other species for thousands of years and have such a neat place in the ecosystem where they exist, and such awesome relationships. On the coast, not our bears, but on the coast, there's the Dr. Reimken work, who has shown that the trees on the coast actually use a specific nitrogen isotope, N15, that's only found in the ocean. So the salmon and whatever will uptake this nitrogen 15 and swim up the rivers, and the bears eat the salmon and then go poo in the woods, and the trees use this nitrogen to grow, and they can trace this through this isotope. So many cool relationships grizzly bears have. So I think a really important part is recognizing, you know, that we are on the unceded territory of the Silk people, and they have such a, you know, and there's many different cultures and nations that use and have different kinds of stories of grizzly bears, but they have such a close connection with them. One of the words, they have several words for grizzly bear, actually, the Silk people, but I think it's the male grizzly bear they call Kilowana, and it does stem from the city Kelowna, right? So that's where the origin of Kelowna came from. But they're always an important part of their creation story, and they're a significant part of their laws and protocols. The decline of our population here kind of demonstrates the need of stewardship of these areas. So this is a slide, Yvonne Patterson, she works for the Okanagan Nation Alliance, and I was hoping she could join us today, but she wasn't able to, but she passed on a few slides for me to share. This is a slide she provided, and it shows the outlining territory of the Okanagan Nation. And within that, they have 3 population units of the grizzly bears. The provincial government has created, I believe, 52 management units for grizzly bears across the province. And ours is the Kettle Granby. And here you can kind of see the boundaries of the Kettle Granby population is the border, the Columbia River, Highway 6 to the north, and then kind of the Kettle River, West Kettle on the west. And of these population units, these 3 are considered threatened. There's the Okanagan, I see in the middle between the red and the brown. There is actually a population unit there, the Okanagan population, but it's considered extirpated. Currently, it's not occupied. And there's a couple population units on the coast, 3 on the coast, and then the yak that are considered highly threatened and endangered. So currently, this was year 1, I believe, of the Okanagan Nation Alliance. They're conducting a 5-year project here in the Kettle Granby that's focusing on habitat quality and food productivity. They're going to look at enhancing grizzly bear foraging habitat through traditional burning practices and field surveys and mapping, and they've used some drone imagery as well to try and find these places where it might be suitable for burning and to increase and enhance the bear foraging habitat. So, you know, most of these areas are huckleberries. They have a long history of burning for berries, which in turn benefits bear species. Huckleberries are very important for our local population of grizzly bears because they don't have access to salmon, which they might once historically through the Columbia, but they lost that. So berries is a huge part of their diet, especially in the fall. And I don't know if you've ever seen a bear eating in a bush of huckleberries, but it's quite amazing to see. So this was year 1, and I was very honored and gracious to be able to go out with them this summer and have a look around some of these areas that they're considering burning. So super exciting project there. Boring slide full of words, but just a quick other things that happen for Kettle Granby grizzly bears. There's, you know, the provincial government that does research. They've done population inventories. They have GAR orders, which is Government Action Regulation Orders. They have FERPA, which governs the Forest and Range Practices Act, and they've done habitat suitability mapping. So we know where the best grizzly bear habitat is, which there's not very much here in the Kettle Granby, as said. They rank it on a 1 to 6 ranking, and the highest quality being 1s. And I think in the entire Kettle Granby, there's like 0.06% are of the highest quality of habitat. So that's why their densities are a lot lower than in other areas. In the past, local government, they created the Kootenay Boundary higher level land use plan and identified connectivity corridors that are super important for grizzly bears. And of course, a lot of stewardship initiatives. The Christina Lake Stewardship Society has been doing the Wild Safe BC program for years, education, taking reports. Groups like Friends and Residents of the North Fork has been challenging policies. The Granby Wilderness Society has been supporting accessing sightings and access management. And we've had universities in the area conducting research, which is awesome. So this is just a quick map kind of the grizzly bear management units that are across the province. And they rank them, they have conservation rankings on them. And you can go to this website. Below, I put the link there, and it's pretty neat. You can click on the different population units and see the threats that are associated with each and how they rank in extreme to low and negligible. So it gives land use managers a better idea of what they can do in their region to improve measures and management measures for grizzly bears. So I was going to go to the website, but I'm not going to. Well, I'll leave that and let you guys go and play with it. It's pretty neat to see what they've done there. So this was some recent research done by Clayton Lamb, who is instrumental in the analysis of the most recent population inventory, which was done the field work was done in 2015, and kind of the results came out in 2016-17. But they were looking at, afterwards, they used the data as well to look at a bit of analysis on the ground and what's driving where bears are. And as always, roads are what are impacting grizzly bears the most. There's been previous research has kind of come up with this number, showing this number of 0.6 kilometers per kilometer squared is kind of the what grizzly bears will tolerate as a road density in an area. As you can see in the bottom left picture, the more roads you have crossing an area, the less secure core areas in between these bears can find. So areas with quality habitat and few roads had the most bears, which translates across all grizzly bear populations, mostly, especially in these areas of more humans. So this was really neat. Years ago, they implemented a management access area, and they were able to analyze how this was impacting the population. And they found that in these road closure areas, it actually boosted bear densities by 27%. So that's a significant finding because many people point to different things, different reasons why our grizzly bear populations may be declining in areas. But this study kind of shows that even though there may be a lot of roads, it might not necessarily be like roads, but it's actually the human activity on those roads that's driving habitat use. So it's an important information for management. One of these important things about these small populations that they're getting isolated. So the yak population in southeastern BC, their genetic diversity has just shrunk right down because they can't connect to other populations around them. So they're extremely threatened because of this isolation. And we have to, help identify throughout their ranges where they can link to other populations. Michael Proctor, he's a grizzly bear biologist out of Caslow, and he's done some incredible work around this. a really neat website to check out his trans-border grizzly bear project. And they've identified fracture zones and fragmentation across the landscape using genetics and DNA sampling, and then looking at the ground and using habitat modeling to identify linkage areas. And then they actually go in there and they'll, buy up properties and do education and work with agricultural producers, which is extremely important to protect these linkage areas for bears making it across roads and areas of human activity and valleys. Yeah, on the other side, we've had some concern from citizens of logging and other forestry practices. So they have approached it from a policy perspective and have challenged policy and gone to Environmental Law Center to get them to evaluate what policies are within the laws that have been created for these bears. So and a really interesting process, but from this report was a big push of why this most recent grizzly bear population inventory was done. Really interesting stuff there. So I, on the other side, like I've been more working on the ground, maybe not in so many recent years, but over the years, I've been collecting grizzly bear sightings. And we do this to understand their distribution, understand where they are the most, understand where they're being seen by roads. So that can help us, identify linkage areas on our local highways. So I just have a few pictures from folks who have submitted pictures for me. And pictures are really the only way that I can confirm it actually is a grizzly bear. As I said, we get lots of reports, but lots of times it ends up being a cinnamon bear. So really neat. And then afterwards, I'll go in and see if I can find where that bear was and try and find some hair samples. Been collecting that for a while to contribute to the genetic database of the population here. So this was, Sherry Wires took this picture of on Highway 3. It's, driving Highway 3 on the Paulson during early May to kind of late May that month. You have good chance of seeing grizzly bears up there. They along the highway corridor is where that grass, that spring grass kind of comes up first. The sunlight can get in. So there's green up there, and that's kind of why sometimes they'll be attracted to these areas to mange on the ditches. This was a Granby grizzly up near Burns Lake. I took this picture actually. Ray Johnson, a local hunter, took me up there. He'd seen this bear, and he was so busy eating the fresh spring green grass, he barely looked up at us. And he stayed in this little area for a bunch of days eating. I think, he'd been up there, 4 days later, we went up there and he was still there eating the green up. This was on the Paulson as well by Lawrence Redfern. We tried to find hair after. We were unsuccessful in this one, but this bear in a clear cut. A lot of the perception around clear cuts is they're bad for grizzly bears, where in some instances they could actually be good for them because they open up the canopy and then we get that understory, getting the sunlight, access to the sunshine, and the berry production will increase. But it's the roads associated again and the human activity associated with these areas. And of course the circumstances under the logging and how that exact logging operation happened can affect the berry production, but they're not necessarily terrible for bears. This is another, my brother actually caught this photo of a grizzly on the Paulson as well. He was very excited to show me when he got to Casgar. There was a sow and 2 cubs eating in a clear cut on the Paulson. This bear was caught on a wildlife cam at Selkirk College in Castlegar. So somehow passing through there, and they were able to share the photo with me, and easy GPS location for that. But I really need to see a bear making it through that area. I don't remember him becoming a problem bear, but yeah, really neat to see. And I've had a few hunters provide some shots too of grizzly bears from their hunting cams and whatnot. So kind of neat to get those pictures as well. So there's a photo by Paul Stone, so a local forester and photographer as well. So he caught this guy up with Paulson as well. I believe it was in the Farron area, munching on some spring green up. And I had to put this photo in for Suzanne. This is a photo taken by her mom of a grizzly bear on the Paulson as well. Really neat getting these photos and the stories behind them as well, right? This was one of my first photos I've seen of a Granby grizzly bear, and I was driving up the Burl, and all of a sudden there's a sow and 2 cubs. Oh my goodness! So of course they, you know, got a picture and they ran off into the bushes, and I wasn't gonna go look for hair quite yet because they were still close. I wanted to wait for them to leave the area a bit more. And then all of a sudden from the other direction, a humongous grizzly boar was running down the road at these mamas and 2 cubs. And I don't know if you know, but grizzly boars will often kill babies of sows so that they'll come into estrus sooner and they can breed them. So I had to honk at them and warn the babies, run, run. So he didn't even, the boar was so focused on his scent, he didn't even see my truck until I honked and scared the bejesus out of him and maybe saved the cubs. I don't know, but I couldn't help it. Interfering with wildlife is terrible. But anyways, so yeah, I mentioned the hair collection. We also collect hair off of mark trees. So grizzly bears will use, and black bears as well, but grizzly bears will use certain trees along their trails to mark their scent and communicate with other bears in the area. And we'll go in and take hair samples from this that also help to contribute to the local population's genetic database. I mentioned human activity access management. We have this established management area around Granby Provincial Park, but it's, you know, it's out there and it's used, and this is historically what has happened to these gates. They end up in the ditch. So this was kind of a neat project. BCTS just came to me and said, hey, there's a gate sitting in the log yard in Midway or something. And you guys can have it if you want to, you know, put up a gate, replace one of the gates. So we did. And literally we did. You know, we got a bunch of folks involved. Smulin, he brought up his excavator, and we had NEPA trucking bring it up, and my husband was in the construction industry, so he knew what he was doing, but we poured the concrete and we got that gate back in for Young, and it facilitated the relock up of all the gates. I think there's 6 of them around this access management area on the Christian Valley side and then up the Burl side. But it still takes effort, it takes resources to go in there spring and fall. The snowmobilers can use this area during the winter time. It's just a closure, and it's a seasonal closure in the summertime. So it takes effort to, you know, keep track of these locks and who has the keys and stuff. And the last time I went up there, it was with Tony Hamilton, and unfortunately there was no lock. The gate was closed, but the lock's gone again. So we'll maybe have to push on that again. But you know, this area has been, this kind of a map up there. This is an old sign, as you can tell. See the wrong conservation officer phone number and everything. But you know, this area was put in place and 2 decades ago, or I think it was in the late 80s it started at least, and it's working. So that's what Clayton Land's report came out with. So it's really neat. But always always, I like to give people the rap line because that's who you call. That's who you can call if you see people in these areas, or, you know, not playing by the rules up there. So if you happen to get, you know, there's not many people up there, so but it's hard to supervise the area when there's so little resources and action up there, right? So it's a challenge. But you know, in the end, it's about, you know, making sure that we have these wild spaces for grizzly bears, and not only grizzly bears, for us too. Our world is so complex with technology and everything, and these places are becoming less and less. I think there's even like Wi-Fi and stuff in the national parks now in Banff, and I know that was a huge controversy, but you know, these wild spaces are so important for, you know, not just grizzly bears, but us too. And you protect these areas for grizzly bears. They're a great umbrella species, you call it. So you protect them, and an assemblage of species under them will also be protected. And I just wanted to put this link in. So we were going to have some high school students join us, but it didn't happen. But there was a neat initiative by the CAS Society. They're in the Kootenays, the Kootenay Association of Science and Technology. They have a little TV series, a little show series. So they interviewed the Okanagan Nation Alliance crew that's working on the Habitat Enhancement Project. So we probably won't have time to play it, but please, it's really interesting, and some fantastic footage, some drone footage of the northern areas of Granby Provincial Park, and it's just stunning. So I really recommend watching it afterwards, or when you get a chance. Yeah, and that's what I have. So I'll send it back to you guys.
Thanks, Jenny. That was awesome. Lots of really good information there. And yeah, it's so great to hear the passion that you have about them. We're lucky that we can enjoy them in our area. That's for sure. Do you want to try the quiz now?
Yes, I do. That's right.
What I can do, I was gonna, if you have the link to that last the cast email, if you can share that in the chat box, that would be good, and then people can check that out later. I wasn't able to pull it up quickly on mine, but I might have typed something in wrong. And then we have the quiz, the bear quiz as well, which I'll just try and find here.
I have the link. I put it in the chat. There it is.
Yeah. Is that the cast link or the bear quiz?
This is the bear quiz.
Okay.
There it is. Yeah.
So what I'll show here,
I can go to it too, Suzanne. I'll go to the web page here.
You want it, and you can share your screen. So those who are listening, if you click on that link in the chat box, it'll pull up a bear quiz for you. Jenny's got the front page. That's what you'll see. Pretty short. It's a one pager, but there's 15 questions. So do your best and try to see how good you are at identifying black bears and grizzly bears. Let me just find where my...
And if you can just let us know that it's working for you, that you got the chat or that you got the link, that would be great. If you just want to quickly respond to that chat box saying, yep, it's signing in, that'd be super. Perfect. Thank you very much. So, wow, those are great, Susie.
So this, is it Bear Smart, Jenny?
Yes.
Smart.com.
Yeah.
So what they've asked me to do is put up a poll afterwards and then you can enter your, do you want me to launch that right now or do you want me to wait a few minutes, Susie?
Let's wait another minute and let everybody get through it first.
Okay. So remember your results, because then we've got a poll that we can put that information into. And so just so you know, Kyle and Mark, panelists can be voting on this as well. Let's see how good you are with the bear identification.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't doing the quiz.
Oh, come on.
Man, pressure's on.
So we can put the poll up now. So Christina is gonna put a poll in there, and it's anonymous, so don't worry about the
Totally.
And you can select. Tell us what you know. It'll give us a good understanding about how much people know about bears and how many times you've seen them, I guess. So we'll give that another minute.
Jenny, I thought that was really interesting, that the difference between the historical coverage of the bears to grizzly bears to now. Like that difference between they used to go all the way down to the Mexican border and they're now pretty much just in Canada. Do you know the timeline of the two maps?
Well, I could guess quite easily, probably, right? You know, early 1900s, right? Okay. Late 1800s.
Yeah. That's a huge difference.
Isn't it though? It's
going all the way down there to really just being in the northern area.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about, you were saying that that ONA is going to have a burn in that area to promote the habitat?
Yeah, that's what they're doing. And they have like an elders component as well, I know, with their people, which is kind of neat as well. But a lot of their funding, of course, this has started from Columbia Basin Trust. So you can imagine the wedge that they have to look at that overlaps the Kettle Granby population and the Columbia Basin Trust funding. So it's pretty much that wedge. The Roslyn Range up to the eastern slopes above the Arrow Lakes, right? So looking at, fire historically has been, there's some really neat burn information available for the boundary and looking where it was. But these high elevation burns would have increased berry production. And of course, we've been suppressing fire so long that, and also our restocking practices, our silviculture practices and forestry can outcompete that berry layer underneath. So some of the, the silviculture treatments you see is just a homogeneous one age stand of lodgepole pine or something, and it doesn't allow for that berry production underneath. So if you get some fire back in some of those areas, but you got to make sure, of course it aligns with all the other values that are out there across the landscape, from forestry and recreational use and human safety. But yeah, it's a neat project. So they hope to have some prescriptions completed this year, I believe. They're looking to their goal is to have 3 prescriptions, and then they'll implement that in the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, I don't know if you know this, but if you burn through and it allows for the berry seeds to come through, do those seeds have like a viability time that they're viable for? And I guess how long would that be? Like if there's no berries in that area and there's still seed bed in the ground, how long does the seed last? Do you know that?
Well, very interesting about the vaccinium species, especially huckleberry. Quite a few years back, I went to a huckleberry forum, and it was, you know, anywhere from First Nations people and people who had commercial interest in huckleberries. And in the whole entire room, no one had ever found a huckleberry plant that was an individual that grew from a seed. They reproduce by rhizomes. Someone in the room was like, I once found a tiny huckleberry plant growing on a stump and no other huckleberries around it for like 10 meters. And he slightly pulled it, and sure enough, it was connected with a rhizome like far away. So yeah, interesting there. So it's kind of an unknown there about the huckleberries and the seeds exactly.
Well,
yeah.
So Christina, do we have any results yet?
Sure do. Here we go.
Look at that. We're experts just about.
Woo!
Oh, good
That's
job,
excellent.
guys. There were some huge bears on that quiz.
All right.
Okay, so we'll move on. And I see, are you guys both good there? So both of these next guys have been conservation officers in Grand Forks since 2008. Kyle Beckert is originally from Kelowna. He completed his Fish and Wildlife Recreation Diploma at BCIT before working as a ranger for BC Parks near Quesnel and as a natural resource officer in Chilliwack. And he lives here now with his wife and their 4 kids, and loves the amazing people, good weather, and awesome recreational opportunities in the Boundary. And Mark, who is in the background, I don't know if you got your own camera yet. There you go. Mark's a Vancouver Island kid who completed his bachelor's degree in natural resource management and protection at Vancouver Island University. He's since worked with BC Parks in Dease Lake, Terrace, and Kamloops, and he and his wife moved to Christina Lake when they were posted in Grand Forks, and he's enjoying exploring this part of the province. And I know for a fact that both of these guys also really like fishing.
True story.
Welcome, guys. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So I guess it would be great if you guys could give us a rundown of your summer in 2020, what your experiences are around the lake, and then just kind of any other general info you want to talk about. And for the folks on the line there, you can put your comments in, type them into the Q&A box if you have any questions for these guys. And we'll go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. Yeah, so myself, Mark, and Kyle's up front there. So we got a few things to go over. We'll start with the wrap line, the importance of calling it and when to call it.
So here, I'm just gonna see if this screen sharing works. And we will go through this here. Is that working?
I don't see it yet.
Oh, 1 sec here. Share. Gotta click the share button. You gotta bear with us. We're a couple of game wardens here. We're not very technologically savvy. So we will, can you see that now?
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome.
Okay, so as most of you probably understand, as conservation officers, we deal with law enforcement when it comes to fish, wildlife, and the environment. There is some overlap, however, between us and natural resource officers. And so something that's really important to notice is when you call the wrap line, it gives you 2 options, and it tells you which option's which. So make sure you listen to it clearly and figure out what it is you need answered or you need a call back for. So option 1 is the Conservation Officer Service, and that's us, and that's 1-877-952-7277. And basically that's to report any sort of human wildlife conflict. So say you have a bear that's cruising through your neighborhood and you want to let us know, or you see an injured deer, or maybe a cougar's come and snatch some of your sheep, call the wrap line and go option 1. Another thing you might call us for is any sort of enforcement that you might need in terms of fish, wildlife, or the environment. So you see someone you think might be over limiting on fish, or they're fishing with an area that you think might be closed to fishing. That's something that we want to hear about. If you are driving down the logging road and you see some guys out hunting and you don't think they should be, or they have an animal, maybe a whitetail when whitetail's not open, that's something also we want to hear about. So call those things in, get as much detail as you can, descriptions of people, get descriptions of license plates, go a long way. Location, make sure you're pretty accurate with your location, and call it in as promptly as you possibly can, and it allows us to react to it as best as we can too.
If you want to show the online, how you can report online.
Yeah, so there's a couple things here. So I just typed in report natural resource violations real quick on the Google machine. And so there's a couple different options, right? So option one here would be report a natural resource violation online form. So this would go to natural resource officers. So this would be water, roads, forestry, misuse of crown land, or a heritage site, right? So if I click on this hyperlink, it brings me to this form. This is the natural resource officer's logo. This is not the conservation officer service. So this will, you fill out these here and fill out what the contravention is, and then hit submit violation report. That will go to a natural resource officer, not the conservation officer service.
I'm just going to get in there for a second. So for one of the things that we get most at our office is questions about water, development along water, or things that are happening along the river. So this is the area where you guys would report those.
So this reported natural resource violation, NRVR, natural resource officers deal with the Water Sustainability Act. So any kind of works in about a stream, changes to the foreshore, anything forestry or industry related, this is where you would report it. And that would be option 2 if you called the RAP line, the 952-7277 number. Go back here real quick. So if you want to report a human wildlife conflict online, that would be this hyperlink. Click on this one. Brings you here. And then there's going to be, you can call this line and report it either through the phone, or there should be an online form that you can fill out as well. It'll be very similar to the form that was done for the NRVR. I can't see it on there right now. But yeah, so the easiest way, in my opinion, to call something in is to make this, call this phone number, right? And then choose option 1, right? And then you'll get to a call taker from Victoria who will take down your information and about what happened. And like Mark said, really important to promptly call in violations, right? So things that go a long way is pictures, pictures, pictures. We want pictures. If you take a picture of someone doing something wrong, picture says 1,000 words, right? So it's really easy for us to follow up if you snap a picture of a license plate or of a person doing something wrong or something that you believe to be wrong, right? So call those things in.
And so further to that, with those reports that we get, we actually do act on them. So for the Grand Forks area, our office, we cover everything from basically the Paulson Summit to Bridesville, essentially, and then north to almost Highway 6. So we got a pretty large area and there's only 2 of us. That being said, we respond to every single report that comes in, whether it's unfounded, meaning there wasn't actually a violation even though you thought there was, or we just need some more information and clarification on the information that you provided to us. So to go into that, last year we broke down some of the numbers for 2020 for human wildlife conflicts. So this involves cougars predating on livestock, cougar sightings, bears getting into your neighborhood or to some of your neighbor's garbage, hopefully not your garbage. Even sometimes we get calls about injured raptors, injured deer, that type of thing. We had 322 calls, which in the province isn't that much. We're not a super busy district when it comes to human wildlife conflicts. But we did get 322 calls last year in the year 2020. So the busiest month for human wildlife conflicts was June, 59 calls just that month. And that's primarily focused on bears in June. So as you guys probably mostly are aware of, the bears start rolling near the end of April, sometimes mid-April. And they get really busy in June and they start tapering off, and we see another resurgence of bears back in October, typically before the fall and winter really sets in. Basically, in that time of June, that's essentially what we're doing for most of our time, is chasing bear calls. So if you call it in and you just had a bear sighting, you might not get a call back for just a bear sighting. But if you got bears that are going into your garbage or your neighbor's garbage and you seem to be getting a problem, we're going to action that as best we can. And Kyle's going to get into some more detail later about how we are handling that across the province. I would suggest for...
Well, I was going to mention that on the BCCO website, there's a section on there that you can read, and I don't know if you guys were going to talk about this, that actually shows the stats about the bears that you handle in a year and throughout the province.
Yeah, exactly. Our problem area, though, like from my area I was telling you about, from the Paulson Summit to Rock Creek and north, primarily, I would say over half of our calls are in the Christina Lake area. And that's probably mostly based on just the type of habitat and the fact that we live close to good bear habitat in Christina Lake. But there is definitely a large number of fruit tree issues that we have in that area, as well as garbage being left out. You can get into some cougar complaints. We typically get those February to March. Not too common in Christina Lake. We usually get the odd Christina Lake call midsummer, it seems like, for whatever reason. There seems to be a cougar that rolls through. Most of our cougar calls seem to be in that Grand Forks area. And just to give you some more information, the 4 busiest human wildlife conflict months for 2020 were May 44, June at 59, August at 40, and October at 42. Just to give you an idea of kind of where our efforts are going at certain times of the year. So the other side of calling into the RAP line is the ERSs, we call them, enforcement routing sheets. And that's referring to any sort of violation that people are reporting to us when it comes to fish, wildlife, and the environment. So we had a total of 187 calls in the year 2020 regarding enforcement. The 4 busiest months for enforcement was July 20th, September 17th.
No, those are...
Oh, sorry. July for 20, September 17 calls, October 36 calls, and November we had 24 calls. So that you can see September, October, and November are pretty busy because that's hunting season. We focus a lot of attention on hunting season, and we get quite a few people in non-compliance, mostly in the Rock Creek, all the way to Christina Lake areas. Where are we going with this? Another thing we want to make comments on, March, April, May coming up right now is a really busy time for burning complaints. So I don't know if you guys remember, but last year around this time when COVID really started hitting, they implemented a fire ban. And so that really increased our burning complaints. So just making sure you're aware of what you're actually calling in when it is a burning complaint. So whether, if you think it's just a smoke complaint, people are allowed to have fires. Granted, there's no fire restriction on, as long as the venting's good when they're burning outdoor, like large land clearing debris it's referred to. Thing not okay is burning garbage. So if you think your neighbor's burning garbage and there's lots of plastic and pollutants going into the air, we want to hear about that. And the sooner we hear about it, the better, just like anything else, so we can actually act on it. So
I can talk a bit too.
I'll just go one more little quick thing to go over. So with all of that, Kyle's going to get into some more enforcement stuff that we did, but I can cap off with our response with human wildlife conflicts and ERSs. We had 322 cases made. Oh, sorry. Around 300 cases made, enforcement files. And that includes like writing someone a ticket or a warning for leaving their garbage out. That resulted in 88 charges and 171 warnings for the year 2020.
And 5 reports to Crown, which are our larger files that go to court. Okay, okay, so I'm going to touch on the enforcement side of things for us in the year 2020. So Mark did a good job explaining the human wildlife conflict side of it. So as an agency, we really get calls that come in 2 ways. One of them is human-wildlife conflicts. So that could be a bear in garbage or an injured deer or a cougar doing something. And then the other way would be enforcement routing sheets. So that would be our investigations that come in. And really there's a third way, which are officer found files, right? So when we go out on patrol, we'll find somebody hunting or fishing or doing something wrong, that generates a file. So, so Fish and Wildlife Enforcement in the boundary for 2020, typically in the winter, Mark and I spend a bit of time doing ice fishing checks. So that is on Jewel Lake, Marshall Lake, and Wilgris Lake primarily. And every year we seem to find contraventions on those lakes. So common ones that we're finding with ice fishing is angling with too many lines. So that's, you're only allowed to use one line per person when you're ice fishing. The only time that you can use more than one line is if you're alone in a boat on a lake. And it's very specific. So you gotta be alone in a boat on a lake, then you can use 2 lines. Any other time in BC, you're only allowed to use 1 line. So Mark and I also both helped out with the West Kootenay Caribou snowmobile patrols. And so caribou are not doing very well in the province, and there's snowmobile closures. And here, I'm just gonna see if I can pull up a couple pictures here that Mark sent me. It's pretty fun. We really enjoy doing the snowmobile stuff. Let me see if I can share this. Oh, one sec. Okay, share screen. Share. All right, let me see. So yeah, so here's a picture of Mark doing a check, right? So
We can just see looks like your desktop is what I see, the box picture.
Is it just my desktop?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the one with the deer.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, right. That's even easier for me. Okay, so there's a picture of Mark doing a check. There's a picture of Mark snowmobiling. But yeah, so we have a lot of fun doing it, but trust me when I tell you, it is very exhausting. So we're getting into these mountain caribou snowmobile closures, right? So we got to get way up in the backcountry. So it takes a lot of skill to ride these machines. And we're getting way up into the backcountry and we're patrolling the boundaries of these caribou closures. And what we find happens is you get stuck a lot. Yeah, that's true. But another thing that happens is the snowmobilers love the powder, right? It's all about riding the powder. That's what they want. So if you go through a period where there's not much snowfall and people will typically behave themselves and stay out of the closure, but then you go through a period of a couple of weeks where there's no fresh powder, and those closures look really tempting to snowmobilers. So they will ride into those closures, creating access routes for predators to get into those caribou closures. The caribou are hanging out. So we do spend, we spent a couple of weeks last year up in the Revelstoke area doing these caribou closure patrol. Really fun. Okay, stop this sharing. Okay. We also did a bunch of turkey and black bear hunting patrols in the spring. So they're fun too, right? And we seem to get quite a few people that will come up, especially to Christina Lake from the coast for turkey hunting, because there is a decent population of turkeys at the lake there. And we did run into a few issues last year with some turkey hunters. So we are looking forward to continuing to do those patrols. During the summer, Mark and I did 4 drifts of the Kettle and Granby rivers. So for those, we're taking our drift boats and we're floating down the river at a time where we think we might find some anglers. And it's typically during that closure from July 25th to August 25th when the Kettle and Granby rivers really warm up. And so yeah, so that closure in effect to help the fish, because when the water temperatures are really high and people are catching and releasing rainbows, it's very stressful on them. And the likelihood of those fish surviving is not good, even though it's a catch and release. So we also did approximately 15 boat patrols on Christina Lake between the two of us, checking anglers. And yeah, we found some good files out there as well. And it's always fun to go out on the lake and talk to people. We find that a lot of the time, some of the out of province anglers aren't getting licenses, which is something that we've been addressing on the lake. So on to hunting season. Between Mark and I, we seized 10 deer this year for different investigations, 10 poached deer. They range from everything from misidentifying a whitetail or a mule deer to hunting outside of the season, so and not having enough tines, to hunting on private property and trespassing. And yeah, so there was a whole plethora of different reasons why we're seizing deer. We also this year had one of our worst years for poached elk. So this year we had 3 5-point elk shot, 2 of which were shot and left, 1 of which was self-reported. And then we had 1 cow elk shot and left. So again, we really encourage hunters, if they make a mistake, like they're shooting a 5-point elk when it's the legal season would be for a 6-point, that you own up to your mistake and you call that in. So if you guys are seeing something like that happen, document it as best you can and let us know, because that's something that we are trying to crack down on, because we would like to see those 5-point bulls survive for another year and become a 6-point the following year. We also ran 4 decoy projects, 2 of which were successful. So decoys are when we have our stationary stuffed deer or elk set up with either like an illegal configuration of antlers or on private property or whatnot. And we target people that may be willing to poach that animal. And so they're really fun, and we really enjoyed running decoys. And but it's always interesting to see who will shoot at a decoy, right? And so we did have 2 successful decoys in the West Kootenays this year, and those both ended up as reports to Crown, so they will be going to court. We also did about 6 game checks, and again, game checks can be very very successful. So I ran a big one in Greenwood in September, where we had the RCMP join us, and we shut down the highway and checked every vehicle that was coming through for about 6 hours. And it's amazing how much wildlife, fish and wildlife, gets transported along Highway 3. It really opened my eyes. When we're checking every vehicle, there's a lot of critters moving along on the highway. And so we were able to find a bunch of really interesting files from that. And we will likely be doing more of that in 2021. One other thing, really appreciate Jenny talking about the bears and the closures in the Granby. Mark and I are dedicated to those closures, and we have been catching people in them. And we have been fining people for being in those closures. And it's a $575 fine if we catch you in there. And we are ramping up enforcement on that, because I completely agree with Jenny when she's saying that roads are creating corridors and restricting populations for animals. And it's not only with bears, it's with deer and everything. Access is huge. So we need to make sure that we're limiting access to the Granby Park where we have these closures. And yeah, Jenny, we are going to be on the ball this year, and we're ramping up enforcement in there. And we got an email the other day about upgrading the signage. So hopefully that'll get fixed too, which we're excited about as well. What's that?
The attracted enforcement project?
Oh yeah, we got attracted enforcement and some outreach. So Mark and I both try to do outreach, and this goes out to you guys too, right? If you guys need contact information, you can ask Susie or find me, and I'll give you some contact information. But the big thing for outreach is we want to reach out to as many user groups as we can. So I got 4 kids, so it's very easy for me to go into elementary schools and do that kind of outreach. But we also like going to AGMs for different things. So I did the Cattlemen's Association AGM this year. Susie and I recently did Grand Forks Senior Secondary Outdoor Ed class. They had a venison barbecue, which we hosted them on Wilgris Lake and did some ice fishing. Mark did Christina Lake Elementary School with the fish and wildlife presentation there. I did the high school, and I did a Greenwood Elementary ice fishing trip on Jewel Lake as well. And yeah, so we try to reach out to the communities as best we can. And honestly, it's a fun part of our job. We enjoy doing it. So if you want either Mark or I to come in and do a wildlife talk, we are more than willing to do that. We'll make time in our schedule. Just flip us an email and we'll plan ahead and make it happen. And finally, kind of the last thing on our list here was the attractant audit for bears that we did this year. So there's a provincial initiative in the Conservation Officer Service to spend time every year and go through and do an attractant audit of our communities. So Mark and I focused on Christina Lake primarily because it seems to generate the most bear complaints, right? And Mark kind of touched base on that, saying that there's a few issues, one being unmaintained fruit trees, 2 garbage, 3 compost, and just Christina Lake where it's located is surrounded by really good bear habitat. So during that project, we went door to door, and would if we spotted some sort of attractant issue, we would go and address it. And so we issued 21 dangerous wildlife protection orders. So what a dangerous wildlife protection order is an order that mandates you to address an attractant. And if you fail to meet that order, then there's a fine associated with it. So we did have really good compliance with people following the orders once they were issued, right? And that's a really good way to address it. We also issued a couple of violation tickets and 10 warnings for during that project, right? And again, it's really important that we all do our part with managing attractants, because as soon as we get complacent or drop the ball a bit, then that's when the bears tend to suffer, right? And both Mark and I, we absolutely hate having to destroy bears, but it is part of the job, and it does happen. And it like almost 100% of the time it's preventable. And these bears get conditioned to natural food sources in communities like Christina Lake, and then they become problem bear. So if we can address our attractants prior to the bears getting at them, then we could avoid the issue altogether. But yeah, we felt like we made some headway in Christina Lake, and we're grateful for the community's cooperation with that attractant audit. And yeah, that's kind of everything I got on my list here.
I just want to make a note, and I know we've talked about this before, but it's so important for people to report things quickly. I find sometimes people call it into our office, and the first call should be to the RAP line. It could be a matter of whether the bear lives or dies, or whether somebody has an incident or not with that animal. So really, really important, folks, that if there is something, call it in right away. Don't call us, and don't call your neighbor, and don't send an email out or put it on Facebook. Just make the RAP line your first step.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you there, Susie. It's frustrating. Nothing drives me more crazy when I find out through Facebook that something's going on, or somebody goes, well, 2 weeks ago I seen this, right? Like that just, I'm like, oh, if you called it in, we would have been able to catch that guy, right? So Mark and I get paid to take calls. That's our job. So never feel like what you're going to call in seems pointless. Or if you do make the call and it ends up being nothing, don't feel bad about it. We get paid to respond to calls. So we always encourage the public, call things in.
And I like what you said too, Susie, about you're calling in the RAP line in addition to notifying people around you. So in the circumstances of having a bear in your neighborhood or something like that, it's always good to notify the people in your neighborhood as well, because what we do is we'll go in, we'll try and address the call, and we'll try our best to go and do outreach with the vicinity in the like that area. But there's only 2 of us, and all of a sudden we get called, we have to go run off to another call. So we can't possibly go do door knocks on every single person in the community. So having that help and making people aware of what's going on in your neighborhood is definitely a bonus as well.
Thank you, guys. I haven't been monitoring the Q&A. It doesn't look like there's anything in there. There is a question.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say there's a question about green compost bins.
Are green compost bins at Christina Lake allowed to be kept outside and locked?
So my personal opinion on the green compost bins is that they're a bit of a false sense of security. So I have seen firsthand bears accessing those green compost bins, right? And getting at that. I understand that sometimes like having your compost inside might get stinky or whatever, right? But if you know that there's a problem bear in the area, or if you live on that fringe where there's frequented by wildlife and bears, right? You need to do your part to deal with that attractant. So it might mean keeping it inside while that bear's hanging around, and it's just so that it doesn't access it, right? But yeah, I have seen bears access those green compost bins. So like during the winter, this time of year, sure, store it outside, totally fine, right? Bears are asleep, like it's not going to be an issue. As soon as that bear season rolls around, bring that green compost bin inside and secure it somewhere where a bear won't access it.
Really good resource if you have questions about attractants and how you might manage them is a WildSafe BC. If you go to their website, wildsafebc.com, it has basically human wildlife prevention for any sort of wildlife that comes in within BC. So you can just click on the species, it gives you a quick information on what the species entails, and it gives you a few ideas on how you can manage your property accordingly. One of the biggest things that we see with bears is the electric fencing is probably the most effective tool. Electric fencing and keeping things clean and as smell free as you possibly can, because as you know, bears can smell from a long ways away.
I'll just show that WildSafe BC.
Awesome.
Just a second here.
So while you're doing that, I'll just quickly go to the second part of that question. Do you know of a better compost alternative, such as a roadside bin, such as the roadside bins that are on the highways? So I think you spoke to that briefly about, so what are some of the other alternatives that people can use for managing compost?
Yeah, so I actually haven't seen it yet, which is surprising, but they do make bear-proof bins. They're a little bit expensive. We have some pamphlets we can maybe get into later. I can put something somewhere. But you can basically buy like a bear-proof bin, and then you could compost in there, and the bear technically can access that. And that'd be a way of managing your attractant. But I think electric fencing is probably the same cost of getting a bear-proof bin, and then you're not having to store it away in something like that.
Yeah, like it depends on so what I do personally is I have that green compost bin, and this time of year we store it outside because there's no attractant problems with bears. But once the summer rolls around, we just put it in our garage, and we just bring it out when it's curbside the day of pickup, right? Like bring it out an hour before you think that compost truck's going to come by. Don't leave it out overnight because inevitably it'll get accessed by a bear. So that's what I do, and I haven't had any issues, and it's been pretty good.
So this is the WildSafe website, and like you were saying, Mark, it is a great resource. So there's lots of information on here about different species. If we click on the black bear, they even have rattlesnakes on here. Here's some information about the black bear. Here's your safety about avoiding bear encounters. There's some sign information, kind of how to identify if there's bears in your area. There is also conflict reduction. I think it's under here. So this would be, as it says here, reported from the BC CO service. and the warp. So the warp page is where incidents that are called into the BCCO service are reported under that, and then they're put under the warp website, or you can get notifications for those as well. So there's, if you kind of go through this website, there are resources about electric fencing. There's one there. And you just kind of have to browse about which species that you want to try to avoid an encounter with, and it'll give you some more information on here. And there's probably, there could be some links within here too. Another, if you guys have kids at home, there's some cool information here for the kids to get involved as well, under the Wild Safe Rangers. So there's some little activities if they're bored, there's things to do outside. In here, there are some, I think there's some activity sheets that you can print out. But really, really important is the species page that lists how you can manage your property around wildlife so that you don't have interactions with them. I'll just quickly, here's rattlesnake. This so the Wildlife Alert Reporting Program, this page will show up, and it's not always 100%. The location sometimes in Christina Lake always seems to be down by Sanders, so it doesn't always give you the exact location of where the wildlife is reported. But in the summertime, this will be probably a lot busier. There's probably a lot of deer stuff on here now. So if this loads, it'll show icons in here when somebody has reported an incident, and you can go on there and just see, sometimes it has a little bit more information. Sometimes it's a little more vague. There's lots of deer. There's some cougar. Probably a lot of these could be.
Yeah, so if you zoom in a bit there, Susan, you'll probably like zoom into the boundary a bit.
So there's our little area of the world.
Yeah, so as you can see, we've had a cougar hanging out in Grand Forks recently.
So if you want to, you can sign up for notifications on this, if that's something that you're interested in. And this just gives a little bit more information about them. So, so they're not always real time. Sometimes it depends on when it was reported. So like we said, if you report things immediately, it's always better. But if it's a few days later when you report it, then it's not going to be on here until then. So it'll be a couple days later, it'll be gone by then, most likely. But anyways, yeah, this is sorry, a good place to look anyway.
So what's the goal? Is it every time we see an animal, or it's a problem animal?
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be a problem animal. Some people just see a cougar. Like for instance, they live up against Hardy Mountain where there's a plentiful amount of white-tailed deer, and we always have cougars in the area. And that cougar might just walk through their property, and so they call us and give us a heads up. That being said, sometimes those cougars, or whatever animal they're calling about, does become a problem. I don't know if it necessarily gets into much detail on the WARP page there, but the idea is more or less just to give you a heads up that a certain type of animal is hanging around an area.
Yeah, so what I kind of look at the WARP page as is sightings, right? So when there's a cougar there, it's likely a cougar sighting. So whether or not the cougar has killed a deer or has killed a dog, you don't really know, but it's a sighting of that animal. Just making people aware, yeah, there's a cougar hanging around on GN Road on Hardy Mountain, or yeah, there's a black bear hanging out around downtown Grand Forks up on the Kettle River, or whatever it is, right? So
that is quite the picture of the camp, of the tent with the bear, with the grizzly.
Yeah, a bit close.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to sleep there.
Oh my gosh.
I'll just stop sharing here.
So we did have one more bear question, and then I've got another one afterwards. It's just not bear related. Bear was seen around the chicken run last year. Food is inside the coop. Are they attracted to the smell of chicken feed or the chickens?
Both.
Yeah, definitely both.
Yeah.
We've had bears rip apart chicken coops like it's nothing.
Yeah.
And they absolutely love chicken, especially when they get the taste for it. They'll just keep coming.
Yeah, chickens are kind of like, we call them bear candy, right? And they do really love chickens for whatever reason. And like Mark said, if they know that there's chicken somewhere and they've had that taste, they're going to be back. So the one thing that really will save your chickens is electric fence. And we've seen it work time and time again on chicken coops. So if you have a bear issue with chickens or chicken feed, electric fence is the way to go.
You need like a fair few strands of electric, or can you get away with, I know I had bees and around my beehive, I laid some chicken mesh around the bottom so the bear would be standing on that if it got shocked. So it was a little bit higher, hopefully. But
yeah, there's a recommendation for electric fencing, and I think most of the information is on that WildSafe page. Basically, they recommend, I believe it's four to six strands, and every second strand be powered.
I have heard too, putting like a piece of flagging or something on it that will attract the bear, just kind of sniff in that spot so that it gets it on the nose is also.
Yeah, so that is one way. Like if you put some sort of attractant, like whether it's peanut butter or something on your strand, because like a bear's nose is wet and it's a conductor, so, and it's very sensitive. So when the bear comes in there for the first time and touches his nose on that hot wire, he's going to get a really good shock, right? And it'll really deter that bear from wanting to come back. So that's what some people will do.
And in addition to the electric fencing too, just make sure you're keeping your chicken coop, whatever it is you're trying to protect, as clean as you possibly can. I mean, chickens are messy animals to begin with, but just make sure you're cleaning up their droppings and there's not a bunch of waste food kind of laying around everywhere.
Suzanne, possibly we should get Jillian Saunders over here and do an electric fencing workshop.
Exactly.
I agree. Yeah, Jillian's awesome. She did do an electric fencing workshop in Westbridge last year, Rock Creek, Westbridge area. And she is like our electric fencing guru, right? Like she is dialed. So yeah. Whenever we have, and the thing is, Jillian will have some compensation for electric fencing, like financial compensation, but it's usually for grizzly bears. So if you were having a grizzly bear issue, then you might be able to get electric fencing at a bit of a reduced price, right? Not typically for black bear issues, but Jillian, yeah, like she is very dialed. And if you have questions about electric fencing, she is the one to talk to because she knows what she's doing.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So moving off bears, we've got another question here. What are some of the no-nos regarding the turkey hunters around Christina Lake? So you'd mentioned that you'd had some problems with turkey hunters or people coming in. What's turkey hunting problem?
Well, I mean, this seems very obvious, but make sure you got your hunting license. Yeah. I mean, even though a turkey is only an upland game bird, you're still required to have a hunting license to hunt them in the province. And simply forgetting to get your hunting license is not good enough for us, right?
Yeah.
But the next biggest thing is turkeys notoriously like being around private property. They like the little bits of fields and farms, and even the amount of people that probably feed them in Christina Lake, they're definitely attracted to private property. So the other issue we typically have is hunters pushing the boundaries and getting onto private property where they don't have permission to hunt. And as a private property owner, if you have turkeys on your property, make sure you're posting your property and that it's very obvious for someone, because they might hike in and around on the crown land, start coming down the mountainside. If there's no fence, no sign telling them, and there's no houses or anything obvious, then they've probably done their due diligence to try and figure out where they are. So.
Yeah, and then so like Mark said, it's a safety issue, right? Hunting around close to town, and so you can't hunt within 100 meters of a residence, right? So that is something that we come across, right? So there's no hunting allowed close to where people are living for safety reasons. And turkeys tend to hang out in those lower, more residential areas, right? So
it should be clarified too. So in the East Kootenays last year, they recently made it illegal to bait turkeys and deer. But in Region 8, where we are, you're still allowed to bait turkeys and deer. for the purpose of hunting. So you can bait them. So if you see someone hunting over a pile of feed, whatever it is, for a turkey or a deer, then that would technically be allowed at this point.
Mm-hmm. That could be changing in the near future. The main reason why they changed that regulation is for chronic wasting disease, which is a disease for deer, right? And when deer congregate in an area, they transmit the disease much quicker. So that was the main reason for making hunting over bait illegal, because deer would congregate around that bait, right? So it might be changing in Region 8, but as of now, like Mark said, you can hunt deer and turkeys over bait.
But not bears.
Not bears.
How far is that chronic wasting disease? How far or how close is it to us?
Sorry, Susie, what was that question?
How far west has chronic wasting disease come?
Oh,
Libby, Montana, I think, is the closest confirmed case. And that's, I guess that'd just be south of Creston, Cranbrook area.
Yeah, like it's not in BC yet, right? So,
Really?
but it's one of those things, like it's creeping our way. So we're trying our best to prevent it from getting here. And, our deer populations aren't doing very well anyway. And with a disease like chronic wasting disease, it would not be good. So we really don't want to see it happen here.
So I've heard situations where people had to bring in the head of their kill. Is that still the case?
Yeah, so that's for specific regions and areas, right? So in the East Kootenays, because chronic wasting disease is right close to there, you need to bring in your head in certain areas to get it tested. Mark's just handing me this paper. So this is like our chronic wasting disease pamphlet. I don't know if you can see it very well. Yeah. But anyways, it's a good handout for chronic wasting disease and what to look for a deer that has it. But yeah, so the reporting of a head is specific to areas. And we did find last year that there was a few deer getting transported when I did that game check in Greenwood that hadn't had their heads tested yet. So they were harvested in the East Kootenay. So that is something that needs to be done if you're hunting over that way.
I just had somebody with their hand up and I see that the hand has gone back down, but if anybody wants to ask the question themselves, just push that raise hand button and I can certainly unmute you on our side.
We do have another one in the Q&A. How close to the road running through the park can a hunter hunt? Example, Gladstone, McRae.
Sorry, see that question again?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't quite hear it.
How close to the road running through a park can a hunter hunt? For example, through Gladstone and McRae.
Gladstone.
So I guess, yeah, what are the road regulations around roads?
Yeah, that's a bit of a loaded.
It's a little bit challenging. If it's a public road or gazetted road, meaning it's maintained by the Ministry of Transportation or a contractor or the city, then you need to be 15 meters from the center line of that road. And of course, you can't be on private property without permission, and you can't hunt within 100 meters of a residence. So there's lots of factors at play there. The provincial park thing, Gladstone Provincial Park specifically, because that's what we're talking about, allows hunting. But there are lots of parks in the province that don't allow hunting, and it all comes down to each park's specific regulations. So the easiest way to answer that is make sure you read the regulations before you're going out. And if you have any questions, give us a call. But if you call the RAP line, there's a way to set up a non-emergency call with Kyle or myself to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, so it's always better to ask before going and doing something that you might regret. Right? So, but yeah, as far as around roads, it's complicated. And if you read the regs, certain highways, you're not allowed to hunt within 400 meters of the highway. Highway 3 is not one of those highways, so you really don't need to be that far off the edge of the highway to be hunting. But we do get people every year shooting animals from the highway, and that is illegal. So yeah, you need to make sure you're the appropriate distance and you're hunting safely, right? So that's the main reason for that.
And if you see those occurrences happening, call it in.
Call it in. Yep. Take a picture of the license plate. Call it in.
I have one more question. Have you ever had to deal with an aggressive turkey?
Aggressive turkeys.
I feel like when you go to Christina
Mark
Lake,
answer this question.
I know, because there's one that kind of like marshals the kids down the road at the school.
Yeah. So like we used to be part of the Cranbrook, or sorry, Castlegar area, and that area gets a lot of angry turkeys for whatever reason. I don't know, something in the turkey water or something like that. But thankfully we don't get too many angry turkeys. But that one Tom that hangs around Christina Lake School, he hangs around my property as well. And last year we weren't even prompting him, and he was gobbling in my front yard and was trying to kind of chase me around the truck. So it does happen, but just stay calm and keep your distance.
But yeah, turkeys can cause quite a bit of damage too, right? Like they can scratch vehicles, and I know that in the West Kootenays, like over Castlegar, Nelson area, every year they get complaints of turkeys causing damage, and that's part of the reason why they made it illegal to feed wildlife or feed turkeys over there, feed turkeys and deer, was to prevent the congregation of turkeys in more urban areas. So.
Does anybody else have any? Do you see any raised hands, Christina?
Nope, looking, yeah, pretty quiet there.
So we have, I don't know, Jenny, if you were still, should we just leave them with the link to the video? I was hoping you could put it in the chat box if you could, because I wasn't able to do that. And that was to the cast one. So Jenny's going to put that in there. If you folks want to watch it when the webinar is over, that would be great. And I think it's, we're hoping that we were kind of hoping the school would sign on today, but they ended up being busy. But it's something that it sounds like could be shared with kids that age as well.
Yeah, I think it was really a reach out to youth and encouraging them in the science and technology fields. That's kind of the purpose of there's a couple shows in there, but I think it's the third one down is the one about the grizzly bears. Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you guys all very much, Mark and Kyle. It's really nice to hear from your side of things, and also nice to hear about things that are not just enforcement based. I think it's really important that people are comfortable calling you guys and coming up to you if they have questions, because you're valuable resources as well. And Jenny, thanks so much for all that great information about bears. I find that sometimes we forget how valuable this place is, you know, unless we're actually out exploring some of these areas. Sometimes you don't realize that they're right in our backyard. So it's nice to hear from you about what's going on out there. And thanks for everybody that tuned in today. So this is going to be recorded. We're not going to be, we'll be posting it on our website. We won't be doing a webinar in March because CLSS has our AGM. Christina, you have another one planned for
April 13th, actually. Yeah, we're looking at wetlands. So throughout the boundary region.
So that's another one to tune into, which will be great. And aside from that, I guess everybody have a great day, and thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Susie, for putting this on. This is fantastic.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
All right.
All right. Take care,
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.